Hey everyone.
Hi.
We are excited to have you with us. We're jumping in, and as promised, we are going to be tackling some hard questions.
Yeah.
We have given you guys the opportunity. We've asked, and some of you have taken advantage of it. Some of you have not, but we'd love to throw that out there. If you've got questions about life, questions about God, questions about, I don't know, why one sports team is better than another. I don't really care. If you've got questions and you would
Why
like...
one sports team is better?
Everyone knows the Rangers are better than other teams. So anyways, but we are jumping in right now because we want to address a very difficult question that all of us at some point in our life or another have asked ourselves.
Yeah.
And the question is, why faith? Why do we believe that God is real? Why do we believe that God did what the Bible says that he did?
Yeah.
Why do we believe what we believe? And, this, I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked this question. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone reference, where we get into a conversation about God, we get into a conversation about relationships, we get into all kinds of conversations with people, and it comes up time and time again, and the question is, I just struggle
With that faith.
I struggle with believing that there's a real God that really cares when all of this is happening and that's happening. I struggle with believing that God is real.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to the question of faith.
Yeah.
Not just when we're talking about faith, we're not just talking about our belief or our lack of belief in God, but the Bible actually has a verse that I'm going to ask my wife to read for us from the Bible, and it's about faith. So she's going to go ahead and read that for us right now.
In Hebrews 11:1, it says, faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of the things that we cannot see.
So right now, we're using this as the definition for faith.
Yeah.
So read it again. Faith is...
Faith shows the reality of what we hope for.
Okay, so stop there. So faith shows the reality of what we hope for.
Yeah.
So whatever you hope for, that's faith. And continue on.
And it is the evidence of the things that we cannot see.
The evidence of the things we can't see. So whenever I get asked the question of faith, I'd like to believe, I've even had people say, I like the idea that there's a higher power, or I like the idea that there's, a God, but I struggle with it because I just can't see it. And again, this all centers around that faith question. But many of us, we don't realize that faith, whether we recognize it or not, faith is a part of our day-to-day life.
Yes.
Every day, we deal with faith.
Yeah.
Every day, when we walk out of our homes and we walk to our car and we sit down in our car and we put our key in the ignition, every time that we do this, we turn the key, we turn the ignition with the faith that the car's going to start. Or
the faith that someone's not going to drive reckless and hit us on the way to wherever it is we're going.
Every time we walk into the kitchen to share a meal with our family, every time we get ready to have a seat, whether it's in our office or, in our family room, in our living room, whatever the chair is, every time we get ready to sit down because we're tired from standing up, every time we do this, it's a step of faith. We're putting faith in the person who... Gus, be quiet. Our dog's over here making noise. We're putting faith in the person that made the chair. That they did a good enough job.
Yeah. Pretty soon I'll be having to take that step of faith
in
our new benches that he's making.
Set. But every time we sit down in a chair, whether you realize it or not, that is a step of faith.
Yeah.
You're believing that whoever assembled that chair did a good enough job that chair is going to hold your weight. You know, I was talking with one of the ladies from our church this week, and I was talking about the movie The Patriot, and whether you like it or not, that's your own fault. But there's a part in the movie that just makes me laugh. You know, in The Patriot, Mel Gibson's character, you know, he's trying to build this rocking chair through the whole movie, and you know, he's got all of these failed attempts, and you know, then there's the one scene where he's got what looks to be a perfectly functioning rocking chair.
Like sneaking a peek.
They're like, oh, is it actually going to work this time? And you know, he walks up to it, and he kind of pokes it, and it rocks back and forth, and he kind of pokes it again, and then he stands in front of it, and he puts his hands on the arms of the chair, and he sits down, and what happens? The chair explodes into like 1,000 pieces. He's lucky he didn't get impaled.
And
he falls to the ground, and everyone
laughing.
runs away. And he, you know, his character is kind of left screaming. And then later on in the movie, he's got a move. There's a scene where he's meeting with these British general, and he's left in his office, and he sees this really nice crafted rocking chair, and he goes over and he does the same thing, and he's amazed that it actually works every time. I'm getting a little, you know, crazy here, but every time that we sit down in something as simple as a chair that we take for granted in our lives, every time we do this, we're taking a step of faith, believing in something that there's no guarantee that chair is going to be able to hold our weight. But every time we do it, we're taking a step of faith, whether we realize or not, and believing that it's going to hold us.
Yeah.
Faith is part of our everyday life.
Yeah.
Not just in God, but
So
in
many
everything.
decisions, yes.
In everything. You know, so really whether someone is asking me this question that we're talking about, and admittedly, so it's a difficult question. Why do you believe in someone that you can't see? You know, how do you expect me to believe that there's a God that I can't see him, I can't touch him like I can touch my wife?
Watch where you're poking.
I just poked her in the eyeball.
Goodness.
You know,
I have to have faith in knowing that I'm going to be safe sitting next to you.
Well, how do I have faith that God is real when I can't see him, when I can't sit down with him and have a conversation face to face like we do with everyone else? And I turn that question around, and I ask this question. Knowing what we've just been, you know, spending the last however long talking about, knowing that faith is a part of our day-to-day life. Faith is, you know, every day, every decision we make, every time we deposit our check, every time we go to work, we're having faith that our employer is going to pay us. Every step of our life includes faith. If you have faith in all of those things, what is so different about God? Why is it so much harder to believe that there's a God, but yet you believe that a chair will hold you, and you go to work and your employer will pay you, and why is it so hard? What is so different? So I'm not trying to, you know, avoid answering the question. We're going to do that now. I wanted to pose that thought to you. You know, a lot of times I think we're guilty of making things more difficult, more complicated than they have to be. Faith, whether we realize it or not, is a part of our day-to-day life. And really, with God, it's no different. Actually, for me anyways, it's a whole lot easier to believe that there is a God and that he did create everything than to believe something like the Big Bang Theory, that everything just magically happened and everything's coincidence. I mean, that takes faith, at least in my eyes. But, you know, I know that there are different people that have different opinions. Yeah. So now we're going to take the next couple minutes, and I'm going to ask my wife, you know, that difficult question: why do you choose to believe? Why do you have faith that God is real?
Before I answer that question, just going back a little bit, when you said sometimes it's really hard. It's easy for us to have faith in all these other areas of our life, but why is it so difficult to have faith in, you know, in God and who he is, and have that kind of relationship with him? Why is it hard for many of us? And I think, honestly, a lot of times it's hard for us to choose to have faith in God, but it's easy for us to have faith in everything else because it can be hard to accept the fact that how can if there is such a thing as a God that created everything, how can he, being so big and wonderful, like everything says and the Bible says, how can somebody like that choose to still love me and die for me? So when I think of it that way, sometimes it is hard to, accept the fact that he does love me and he did choose me and he wants relationship with us. And, many times when we hear that, I don't know if it's necessarily like I just can't have faith in that, but sometimes it can be hard to accept the fact that somebody truly loves us enough that he would sacrifice everything for us.
Yeah. If there is a God, right?
Yeah.
If there is a God and he really is everything that you say he is, that he knows everything, he is all powerful. If he knows everything, he knows what I think, he knows my actions, he knows everything.
Yeah.
How can he still love me? This is really what I believe is the challenging part for most people. Is this question gets so much bigger so quickly.
Yes.
But I think we're guilty of making things more complicated than they really are sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe not all the time, but anyway.
Yeah,
So going back to that,
the fact is, God wants to have a relationship with us. He desires to know us more. So, how do I have faith? What was the question?
Why do you have faith that God is real?
It's not just because of what I've heard. It's not because of things that I've read in a Bible or online or whatever, or different stories that I've heard. Those are all wonderful things that inspire us, that attract us to want to know more and to be curious. Is this real? But it's about the personal level. It's the fact that I have experienced God.
Yeah.
When all else failed in my life, things didn't go right, God was always consistent and he was always there. And when I, struggled with different areas in my life, different seasons where I felt like I was alone, I felt like I was broken, time and time again, I can see, even now looking back, God's hand was moving in and through my life. Yeah. In so many different areas, God was always trying to get a hold of me. Maybe it was through somebody that I met at church, or somebody that I met at work, or my parents praying for me and believing for me even when I didn't believe it myself, or I didn't want to believe it because I just didn't have enough faith to believe it. It was just too much. I had so much going on and I was too busy with my life and the way things were that, for one, I couldn't accept the fact that there was a God that really, really loved me, even though I was so, sinful. There was just no way. But it had to come to that point of realization that, God, I know that you're there. So if I know that you're real, what's keeping me from coming closer to you, from drawing close to you? And that's when I decided to say, okay, God, if you're real and you are all these things that everyone says you are, then I'm going to choose to follow you. I'm going to choose to change my life around. And the minute that you make that decision, not someone else making that decision for you, because nobody else can change you. Only God can change you. He's the only one.
That's only going to last for so long.
Yes. And the minute that I made that decision, I experienced God in my heart. I know even without a doubt that he is with me all the time.
Yeah.
So I have the faith to believe that he is all I need.
Yeah. Because
before I was empty.
Yeah.
So if I was empty before and now I am fulfilled, then there is a God. And that is my faith. That's where my faith comes from. It comes from not being able to see God. I can't see God. I can't see him presented in front of me. There's not this light that just shows up all of a sudden. I don't hear this magical voice.
That would be pretty cool, though.
But I know in my heart that he is there because I can feel him, I can experience him, and I can also see him working in so many areas of my life and in our ministry and just every single day.
Yeah. Obviously this is these are personal answers, because here's the deal. Whether you believe in God or you don't, there's very little that either one of us are going to say that's going to change that.
Yeah.
if you don't believe in God, then, me opening up my Bible and reading my Bible to you, I mean, God's word is inspired. It's powerful.
Yes.
But if you don't believe that's real, we can argue on that. And, I obviously, I think a lot of times arguments do very little good. Arguments are good for one thing, getting both sides riled up. So when we're answering these questions, both of us, we're giving a personal experience, a personal answer, because we can debate and we can go back and forth on the legitimacy of the Bible, but you're not going to really debate my life experience, what's happened
story.
In my life. I know if I'm going to answer that question, of course I am. The reason that I choose to put my faith, and I believe that not only is God real, but he's alive and active in my life, and he loves me just like I believe he loves you, is because, again, of what's happened in my life.
Yes.
I mean, when I was at my worst, I had no hope. I hated myself. And I'm not like, oh, poor me. No, like, I legitimately hated myself. I got made fun of. I mean, life was bad. Depression, I mean, all of these things. My life felt like it was spinning out of control. I felt like, and I know this wasn't true, but it felt like I was all by myself. I was all alone. And at that moment, God made himself real to me. And I grew up in church, and I could have told you all the stories from the Bible like they were, I might as well have been, telling you a fairy tale.
Yeah.
I had all of that stuff memorized all in here, but when it clicked and it became alive and became real to me was when I walked through one of those low times of my life, and God showed up. And, it was different to me than it might be for you or whatever your experience was. But in my life, when I was battling depression, I had tried, singing Kumbaya and all this other stuff, and nothing worked. And I finally got at rock bottom, and I said, God, if you're real, help me. Yeah. And he did. And I would be lying if I said that overnight everything was, 100% better.
Yeah.
But I had hope that I didn't have before.
Yes.
I was able to receive love like I wasn't able to do before. I didn't feel alone. Yeah. I knew that everything was different, and even though it wasn't okay just yet, everything was going to be okay. And I think a lot of us, we underestimate the power of hope.
Yes.
And that, and so many other things is, to me, that's a big reason of why I believe in God, is because God brings hope like nothing else can.
Yeah.
I mean, we go through struggles, we can try and hide it behind a whole lot of things. And it may mask it for a while, but it'll all come back when the high wears off. Mm-hmm. But it's not that way with God.
Yeah.
So, I apologize if that's not a super direct, like, here is my thesis and blah, blah, but I really don't think, if you're really walking through that way of thinking and you're asking yourself this question at this moment, I don't think me laying down a 3-point, explanation for why God is real is really going to help you. But me sharing from our heart on what God has done in our life. Yeah.
I would encourage you, if God has been real to you in your life, if you have that faith to believe in him, I would encourage you just to find somebody this week to share that with. Post it on Facebook. Why do you have faith to believe in God? What is your reason? What is your story? Find someone. Pray. Ask God, show me who I can share that with, because people need to hear. People want to hear. Yeah. They're looking in so many different directions, and they don't know exactly what they're looking for, but I can tell you this,
something's missing.
Yes, and if you're watching and, maybe you have been searching. You've been searching for that feeling, that's been that empty hole inside of you. And you've gone here and there, you've talked to this person, that, you've read this online, and all this stuff that you've done. I can tell you right now, you don't need to look anymore, because there is a God who loves you, and he is amazing, and his presence and his hope and his love, that is the evidence of what we cannot see. And that's what that verse is talking about. That is the evidence of what we cannot see. So maybe you can't see it, but I promise you, if you ask, he's going to be there, and you're going to know that he's there.
And if you're just beginning that journey, and maybe you have follow-up questions, or you'd like to to talk to someone, we're here. We'd love to connect with you. I mean, you can hit us up here on Facebook. We'd love to connect with you and help you. We've got resources. We'd love to get into your hands as you continue to walk through making this decision and finding out more about Jesus and what being a Christian means, and this and that. I mean, we want to be here to help. We want to help. So as we get ready to wrap up, I do want to throw this out there. We tackled a difficult question tonight, and we did our best. We don't know everything. There's so much that we don't know, and
we're still learning every single day.
Oh my gosh! But one thing I do know is this: we would love to help in any way that we can. I want to open the door for you. Obviously, we attacked one difficult question right now tonight, but if you've got a difficult question, you've got a question that you've always wondered about. What did the Bible mean when it said this? Why do Christians do this? Whatever your question is. Some of the last times we've asked this, I've gotten silly questions that, what do bald guys use to wash their head? Shampoo or soap?
That was also asked by teenagers.
Yeah, so. Well, anyways, but we're here. We're available. We don't have all the answers, but we would love to assist you in any way possible. Bring on the hard questions. Bring on the easy ones. You can connect with us here on Facebook. Again, we'd love to help out in any way that we can. But right now, I think we're going to wrap it up. So, love to connect with you again.
Hope you guys have a great
night. Hear
night.
from you. Yeah. Send in those questions, because we will answer them. Every week we'll jump in and attack more of these questions. So, send them in. We love you guys. We'll see you soon.